Her heel slipped on the edge of the marble step as she spun, laughing into his shoulder, champagne in one hand, her other hand still looped around his neck. They didn't see me watching. No one did. I might as well have been the flower vase in the corner, decorative, unacknowledged, in the way. When her dress twirled and caught the light just right, I saw the tag was still hanging underneath. Brand new. For him? I don't know. But not for me. They danced like a movie couple. The kind where the husband is already dead in the plot and just doesn't know it yet. I stood maybe 10 feet away, holding the little envelope she'd handed me 20 minutes earlier. For later, she had said, smiling the way someone smiles when they're bluffing in poker, trying too hard to sell it. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't need to. The band shifted into something slower. She leaned into him now, like gravity had changed direction and pulled her chest toward his. Her laughter, breathy and unguarded, floated into the room. I waited for her to glance over. Just once. For a flicker of guilt, maybe. A flash of memory. A split-second reminder that I was still in the same air. She never looked. So I opened the envelope. Inside was a note. 6 words. Don't wait up tonight. Please, Lowell. It didn't even say love, Junie. I folded it neatly, slid it back inside, and placed it on the corner of the piano as I walked out. Let the music swallow it. 2 women standing by the hallway door glanced at me and whispered something. Maybe about the note. Maybe about my face. One of them touched the other's arm and said, he didn't even say a word. And I didn't. Because when someone dances with another man like you're invisible, saying something is the one thing you no longer have the right to do. But she regretted it. Not days later. Not after a fight. Not after the truth came out. No. She regretted it the second I stepped into that elevator and let the doors close, with my silence louder than any goodbye she'd ever get. The strange thing about elevators is how quiet they get once the doors seal. Like the world outside doesn't matter anymore. Like grief and betrayal and questions don't have access to the same floor. I didn't cry. I didn't clench my fists. I just stood there, staring at the little blinking numbers as I descended, each floor a countdown not just out of a building, but out of a marriage. When I stepped out into the lobby, the doorman nodded politely. He didn't know anything. He probably assumed I forgot something in the car. But that was the moment I realized. Everyone here thinks I belong upstairs. With her. Like I'm still part of the picture. Still part of the night. I walked across the wet pavement, drizzle now slicking my shoes. No umbrella. No plan. I didn't even know where I was going. I just kept walking. I passed the valet, who asked if I needed my ticket. I told him I didn't drive. That was a lie. I just didn't want the last thing I did tonight to be retrieving something I came with. I sat on a bench 3 blocks away under a flickering pharmacy sign. My phone buzzed once. Then again. Then silence. I didn't check it. Not yet. I didn't want to see her name glowing on the screen like some twisted apology I hadn't asked for. I just watched the cars pass. Watched as people in formal wear piled into Ubers, drunk and spinning, heading home with stories they'd laugh about. And somewhere in that chaos, Junie was probably realizing I was no longer standing in that room. What did she think when she turned and saw I was gone? Did she check her purse for the envelope? Did she panic? Did she suddenly remember the man she married? Or did she keep dancing, holding on to Arlo like he was some reward for surviving 9 years of quiet marriage? I finally unlocked my phone. 3 missed calls. 2 texts. Lowell, where are you? Can we talk? Please come back. I stared at the second message. Please come back. Like I was just outside getting air. Like nothing irreversible had happened. I put the phone in my pocket. I wasn't angry. That's what people don't understand. Betrayal doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sits quietly next to you like a shadow you can't shake. Half an hour later, I was in a diner. Red vinyl booths, fluorescent lights, that strange hum of a refrigerator in the back. I ordered coffee I didn't drink. I just needed a place that didn't smell like perfume and jazz and someone else's hands on my wife. And then she walked in. Junie. No jacket. Hair down now. Breathless. Like she'd been running. Her eyes scanned the room and locked on me. I expected a storm. A scream. A dramatic monologue. But all she did was walk over and whisper, "Can we please go somewhere private?" I stared at her. I stared hard. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to protect her feelings before my own. No, I said. You danced with him like I was invisible. So maybe you should go ask him for privacy. She blinked. Once. Twice. And then her world, the one she thought she had under control, began to crack right in front of me. She sat down across from me anyway. Junie didn't speak right away. She just sat there in the opposite booth, eyes darting to the crumpled napkin I'd been folding and unfolding like it was holding my nerves together. The air between us was thick with words she hadn't said and I hadn't asked for. Somewhere behind her, a waitress refilled someone's coffee. The clink of porcelain felt louder than her breathing. I didn't offer her anything. Not a greeting, not a seat, not a single ounce of grace. She had taken all of that with her when she stepped into that man's arms. But still she sat. Still, she stared at me like the truth could somehow fix what she'd danced away from. Finally, she spoke. Lowell, it wasn't what it looked like. I actually laughed. It came out more like a cough, but it was there. That raw, disbelieving sound that bursts out when someone insults your intelligence straight to your face. I didn't say anything in response. I just leaned back, arms folded, waiting to see which lie she'd pick first. I didn't know he'd be there, she said quickly, as if speeding through it would make it more believable. Arlo just showed up. He's Brecker's nephew. I didn't know. I shook my head slowly, deliberately. You didn't know he'd be there, I repeated. But you sure danced like you were waiting for him. That's not fair, she shot back, but her voice was trembling. It was just a dance. No, I said, leaning in slightly. It was just the moment you stopped pretending you still saw me. That shut her up. And then, as if scripted by whatever cruel force was directing this scene, her phone vibrated. Loudly, face up, and I saw the name flash across the screen before she had a chance to turn it over. Arlo. We both stared at it. She made no move to answer. No explanation. Just silence. My chest tightened in a way that didn't feel like heartbreak anymore. It felt like clarity. Like confirmation. The kind that makes you breathe different. Answer it, I said. She blinked. What? You heard me. Answer. On speaker. She looked stunned. Not ashamed. Not guilty. Trapped. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then retreated. I can't. I nodded. Then I think we're done here. But just as I started to stand, she reached across the table and grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but desperately, like letting me go would mean drowning. Okay, she whispered. Okay. I didn't know he'd be there, but I did talk to him earlier this week. I sat back down, not because I was ready to listen, but because I knew the next part would be the real story. The part she had rehearsed 100 times in her head and never thought she'd actually have to say out loud. I ran into him at a bookshop a few months ago, she began, voice cracking. He was different, more mature, confident. And I don't know Lowell. I missed feeling seen. That word hit me like a punch to the stomach. I made a mistake. I flirted. He flirted back. We messaged a little. Just dumb stuff. But I swear, nothing happened. I didn't respond. Not yet. I just watched her fidget, twist her napkin into nervous knots. She wasn't telling me everything. I could feel it. There was a layer beneath her voice, something curdled with guilt, but not regret. So that message you left me in the envelope, I finally asked. The one that said, don't wait up tonight. What exactly did that mean if you weren't planning anything? Her mouth opened, and then closed. That's when I knew. She had written that note before the party even started. She hadn't been improvising. She hadn't been caught off guard. She had been preparing for this. For his presence. For a version of the night that didn't include me. And yet, she sat across from me now, crying like she wanted forgiveness for a plan that had only fallen apart because I'd refused to play my part as the blind husband. I stood again, slower this time. She didn't grab me this time. She didn't plead. But as I turned to walk out of the diner, I heard her whisper something that chilled me in a way her confession hadn't. I didn't think you'd actually leave. I didn't turn around. Because that was the problem all along. She never thought I would. I didn't go home that night. I didn't even go to a hotel. Instead, I drove. No destination, no plan. Just miles of highway and radio static. I passed exits I couldn't name, gas stations lit up like islands in the dark. Somewhere around 3 a.m., I pulled into a 24-hour laundromat parking lot and fell asleep in the driver's seat with my jacket as a pillow. That's what you do when your life collapses in the middle of a perfectly normal evening. You downgrade your dignity to something that fits between car doors and broken sleep. When I woke, my neck ached, and the sun was already high enough to make everything seem annoyingly real. I washed my face in the restroom of a diner that didn't ask questions and ordered eggs I barely touched. I kept checking my phone like it owed me something. A clearer message, a final confession, A version of reality where this was all some terrible miscommunication. But no, just silence. Junie hadn't called. No new texts. No, where are you? No, come back. But that wasn't what got me. It was what came next. When I finally turned my phone off airplane mode, a notification popped up from a guy named Mason. I barely knew him. He was some mutual acquaintance from one of Junie's work events a year ago. Photographer, I think. Cool guy. We hadn't spoken since the night I helped him carry gear down a staircase after an outdoor wedding. The message was simple. Hey man, I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but you deserve to know. I was at the party last night. Something felt off. You okay? Something about that text hit differently. Not just concern, knowledge. He was at the party. He saw what I saw. Maybe more. I replied, what did you see? Be honest. I won't freak out. Seconds later, he sent a photo. I stared at the screen for a long time before it registered. It was blurry, grainy, taken at a weird angle, but unmistakable. It was Junie, and Arlo, outside on the rooftop balcony. Her hand was on his chest. His lips were against her forehead. She wasn't pulling away. She was smiling. The timestamp? 11 minutes before I opened that envelope. She already knew she wasn't coming home that night. I called Mason immediately. He picked up fast. Lowell, he said, voice tense. Man, I wasn't going to get involved. But when I saw you walk out, and then saw her still, with him, I don't know, it just didn't sit right. Was it just that one moment? I asked. He hesitated. No, they were out there for a while. I think a few people noticed. She looked comfortable, like it wasn't their first time. I felt my stomach drop. You're sure? Honestly? Yeah. She touched his tie. You don't do that if it's casual. I thanked him, barely, and hung up. I sat in my car, phone in hand, eyes stinging not from tears, but from the realization that the version of Junie I thought I married had quietly been replaced with someone else, someone rehearsed, someone cold enough to leave a message in an envelope while warming up for a rooftop kiss. But here's the part that cut the deepest. Mason saw it. Strangers saw it. Random guests. People who barely knew us. And no one said a word to me. Because to them, I was already the ghost in the picture. The forgotten man. The one who'd clearly been left behind, even if I hadn't figured it out yet. I wanted to scream. I wanted to drive straight to wherever she was and demand something. Answers, apologies, pain, something that made her feel a fraction of what I was feeling. But I didn't. Because I realized something far worse than betrayal. She wasn't hiding it anymore. She wasn't scared of being caught. She was done pretending. And I had nothing left to lose. I didn't go back to our apartment. Something in me refused. Not out of revenge, and not because I was trying to make her panic. No, it was simpler than that. I just couldn't bring myself to return to a space I now realized had been quietly shared with a second life. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. The moment she started calling him Arlo again, I stopped being the only man who lived in her world. Instead, I drove to my brother Nolan's place. He lives about 45 minutes outside the city, runs a niche woodworking business out of his garage, and doesn't ask questions unless you hand him the permission slip. When I showed up on his porch looking like a man who'd slept in his car and hadn't blinked in 12 hours, he didn't even say hi, just held the door open and pointed at the spare room. I crashed for 18 hours. Straight. No dreams. No nightmares. Just the kind of blackout sleep you fall into when your nervous system gives up. When I woke, Nolan was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and 2 mugs of coffee between us. Without looking up, he said, "You want to talk about her? Or you want to talk about what you're going to do?" I sat down slowly. "Both." He nodded, clicked his laptop shut, and gave me the kind of long, evaluating look only an older brother can give. The kind that mixes concern with a little unspoken judgment. "She call?" he asked. I nodded. 3 times. "You answer?" "No." He sipped his coffee. "Good." There was a silence after that, but not a heavy one. More like a waiting silence, the kind that dares you to say the part you've been too afraid to say out loud. "I think she's been seeing him for longer than she admitted," I said finally. Nolan didn't react. Just kept sipping, letting me spiral. "I don't think last night was a slip-up. I think it was a checkpoint. A milestone." "You check her phone yet?" he asked. That hit harder than it should have. I had spent so many years respecting her privacy, believing that trust meant not needing to look. But now, I realized I had never really wanted to look. Because part of me had always known something was off. "I don't have access," I muttered. She changed her passcode about 2 months ago. Said it was because of work emails. Nolan tilted his head. You know you can backtrace social accounts from a laptop, right? I mean, if she used any shared Wi-Fi, cookies are still there. Browser history. Even if she cleared it. I blinked. What are you saying? I'm saying if you want the truth, stop acting like the only tools you've got are hope and patience. So I pulled out my old laptop, the one we kept in the living room cabinet for emergencies. I hadn't touched it in months. Battery nearly dead, but it still booted up. Chrome opened slow, but it opened. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Messages? Email logins? Saved bookmarks? I started scrolling. And then I saw it. One of the autofill suggestions, under a half-typed email address, read j.rourke.private@protonmail.com. Not her regular address. Not even her backup. This was something I'd never seen before. My hand shook slightly as I copied it into the search bar. Nothing came up, obviously. Encrypted email providers don't play that game. But I recognized the domain. Private. Secure. Hard to trace. Intentionally separate. I turned to Nolan. She was emailing someone through Proton Mail. Let me guess, he said. Arlo. Probably. I opened the Downloads folder, hoping for any leftover document or image, something she forgot to delete. And that's when I found a PDF titled Sutton_House_contract, draft 2.pdf. I opened it. It was a lease. A rental agreement. For a 2-bedroom townhouse in a part of town we had never even discussed moving to. The date? Signed last week. Only one listed tenant, Juniper Rourke. No cosigner. No mention of me. No forwarding address. No shared utilities. Just a clean, separate start. I stared at it for a long time. The way someone stares at an autopsy photo and waits for the cause of death to jump off the page. She hadn't just planned for a night away. She had planned for an exit. And the worst part? She had done it quietly. Like a woman folding laundry. Like someone rearranging their life between texts. Nolan looked over my shoulder and let out a low whistle. She wasn't cheating, he said quietly. She was transitioning. And that word, transitioning, sat like a hammer in my chest. Because it was true. I wasn't just being left. I was being phased out. I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't even send a photo of the lease contract I'd found on the laptop. Something inside me, something brittle but sharp, wanted her to feel the silence. Not the kind of silence that begs for attention. The kind that signals extinction. I had been erased from her plans, from her future, from her inbox. And now, I would erase myself from her perception of control. 2 days passed. On the third morning, a manila envelope slid under Nolan's front door. No return address. Inside, a handwritten letter from Junie. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first. It was smaller, tighter, like she had written it in a rush but still tried to make it look composed. The first line made my throat tighten. I didn't know how to say any of this out loud, so I didn't. I guess I thought if I waited long enough, the choice would make itself. It went on for 4 pages. No apology. Not a real one, anyway. Just explanations. She wrote that she felt like our lives had calcified, like we were still together because it was easier than ending things. She said she hadn't intended to meet Arlo again. She called him a spark she didn't know she still needed. She said it wasn't about him, not really. That it was about her. About rediscovering herself. About reclaiming space. I stopped reading. Because buried under all the self-discovery and poetic phrasing was the same truth I already knew. She had been preparing to leave me while still kissing me goodnight. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Later that afternoon, I drove to the leasing office listed on the rental contract. I wanted to see the place with my own eyes. Not to make a scene, just to know what kind of life she had built for herself behind my back. The building was modern, too clean. Not the kind of place we ever talked about moving to. A young woman at the front desk gave me a polite smile and asked if I needed help. I told her I was interested in a unit and had seen a listing recently for a 2-bedroom. She smiled and tapped a few keys. Actually, that one was just leased. Last week. Tenant's name is Rourke, right? I froze for half a second, then nodded. Oh yeah, she and her partner came by twice before signing. Super friendly. I think they're planning to move in early next month. I blinked. Her partner. The woman tilted her head. Yeah, the guy she came with. Tall, kind of grayish hair. He seemed a little protective. She let him speak for most of it. That wasn't Arlo. I felt the ground shift under me. I stepped back, thanked her quickly, and left. my heart pounding in my chest like it had been wound too tight. Who the hell was this other man? Had she been with more than one person? Was Arlo just the one she got caught with? Back in the car, I did what I swore I wouldn't do. I opened her social media. Most of her posts had been wiped, photos archived, friends list hidden, profile descriptions trimmed down to a minimalist bio. But there was one thing she forgot to make private. An event RSVP. From 2 weeks ago. A gallery opening. Small. Local. Hosted by a man named Kieran Galloway. I didn't recognize the name. But when I clicked on his profile, everything became clear. Photos of abstract sculptures. Candid shots of guests at openings. Comments from Junie on multiple posts. Emojis. Inside jokes. One post stood out, a black and white portrait of Junie, backlit, captioned simply. Muse. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some one-night curiosity. This was curated. Ongoing. Intimate. I zoomed into the photo. There was a shadow in the corner, a silhouette, partially cropped out. Not Arlo. Kieran. And now I saw it. The softness in her eyes. The smirk on her lips. A familiarity that didn't belong to a woman stumbling into something new. This wasn't an affair. It was a migration. From Arlo to Kieran. Or maybe both. Or maybe I was just the space between whoever she was really with. I sat there, trembling with a fury I hadn't earned the right to express. She had already rewritten the story of us, and in her version, I was just a side character who overstayed his welcome. But she had made one miscalculation. She thought she'd gotten away with it cleanly. And now I was standing in the middle of the mess she left behind, finally beginning to understand what role I really played in her life. I wasn't the husband she betrayed. I was the ghost she forgot to bury. I didn't go to Kieran's gallery to make a scene. I didn't even go intending to talk to her. I just needed to see it, to feel what she'd built with her lies. There's something surreal about realizing your partner didn't just betray you behind closed doors, but performed that betrayal for an audience, framed in spotlights and wine glasses, like it was a personal renaissance. I had to witness the shrine she'd built from the pieces of our silence. The gallery sat tucked between an artisan bakery and a boutique pet spa. Of course it did. Everything about it screamed curated bohemia. Exposed brick. String lights. A single handwritten Galloway logo above the door in lowercase, like it was too cool to need capital letters. I arrived early, before the crowd filled in, and blended into the corner like one of the unframed canvases leaning against the wall. No one noticed me. They weren't here for me. And then she walked in. Junie wore a black jumpsuit with an open back, hair swept up just enough to show the small tattoo I didn't know she had. A line of text curved just below her neck. Free before I knew I was caged. The ink was fresh. So was the meaning. Kieran was already there, greeting guests with that soft, fake humility that artists wear like perfume. He wasn't who I expected. Not flashy. Not loud. Just calm. Neutral. The kind of man who knows he's already won and doesn't need to say it out loud. He kissed Junie's cheek, and they laughed about something I'll never know. And in that moment, standing there surrounded by people who applauded the version of her that had left me behind, I realized she had no intention of ever coming back. She had mourned me before I even knew I was dying. But that didn't mean I was done. I waited until the room grew loud. Until the music masked footsteps and the wine made everyone bold. And then I walked up behind her close enough to see the way her shoulders tensed the second she recognized the rhythm of my breath. She didn't turn around. Not immediately. Instead, she sipped her drink, like she was calculating how to manage the situation, how to minimize the damage, how to survive the exposure. Hello, Junie, I said softly. She finally turned, smile half-cocked, voice low. Lowell. I didn't think. You didn't expect me to come, I finished. I know. Kieran watched from a few steps away, uncertain but calm. Like he'd been warned. Or worse, like he already knew everything. I looked at him and said, you might want to hear this, too. Junie tensed. Lowell, not here. Why not? You made everything else public. People were noticing now. Not everyone, but enough. 2 women glanced over. One man pretended to admire a sculpture but kept one eye on us. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I just spoke like someone who had waited far too long to stop whispering. I found the lease, I said. The one with your name only. I found the emails. The pictures. The letters. You didn't just leave. You buried me in real time. While I was making dinner and folding your laundry, you were busy rehearsing a life where I didn't exist. Junie blinked. But there were no tears this time. She didn't reach for me. No apologies. Kieran stepped forward, awkward but civil. I think maybe we should. She never told you I was still living in the apartment, did she? I said, eyes on him now. She never said she hadn't filed for anything, that she never spoke the words out loud. Not to me. Not even once. He looked at Junie. Her lips parted. Nothing came out. That was all I needed. I nodded. Good to know. And then I walked out. I didn't cause a scene. I didn't scream or throw things or demand explanations. I left the gallery with one truth on my side, that in front of the man she thought was her escape, and in front of the strangers who had replaced our friends, she had nothing to say. And silence, this time, wasn't mine. It was hers. But I wasn't finished yet. Because when I got back to Nolan's place, there was a voicemail waiting on my phone. Not from Junie. Not from Kieran. From a woman I barely knew. Her name was Carrie, and she was Arlo's wife. I didn't recognize the number when my phone rang that night. I was still standing on Nolan's porch, the gallery confrontation replaying in my mind, over and over, like a scene I hadn't really believed would happen, until it did. The voice on the line was calm, careful, and just uncertain enough to feel real. Is this Lowell Rourke? She asked. I paused. Yes. Who's this? My name's Carrie. Carrie Michaels. I think we might be in similar situations. Her voice cracked on that last word. And then she said something that made my whole world shift again. I'm Arlo's wife. There was silence. Long, tense, not hostile, just stunned. I found your number through an old contact form from the Brecker event, she continued. You were listed as Juniper's emergency contact. I know this is intrusive, but I need to talk to someone who knows what this feels like. Someone who isn't pretending everything's fine. We met the next day at a quiet bookstore cafe, halfway between her side of the city and mine. She wore no makeup. Her hair was pulled back like she hadn't bothered to fix it in days. And when she looked at me, it wasn't with pity, it was with recognition. She knew that kind of pain. She knew the sound of someone whispering over your life behind your back. I found out about Arlo and Junie 3 weeks ago, she said, hands wrapped around her coffee cup like it was the only thing grounding her. They'd been meeting for months. I confronted him. He denied it. Then I found the receipts. Hotel room. Gifts. A ring. A ring. I asked, heart stalling. Carrie nodded. He proposed to her. In private. Said they'd announce it once their divorces were final. Except Junie never filed hers, did she? I shook my head. No. That's because she wanted to keep her exit options open, she said quietly. Arlo thought she was choosing him. I think Junie was choosing no one. I think she was trying on lies like coats in a store, seeing which one felt warmest. That line stuck with me. We sat there for nearly an hour, not venting, just stitching our own realities together. And somewhere in that conversation, something strange happened. We laughed. It started small, a comment about Arlo's ridiculous cologne. Then something about how Junie had once said she hated galleries, and yet somehow is now the centerpiece of one. The laughter didn't erase the pain, but it put space between it and us. And in that space, something began to shift. Carrie eventually filed for divorce. Cleanly. Quietly. She moved back to Vermont to be closer to her sister. She sent me a message 2 weeks later with a photo of a lake, a dog she rescued, and the caption, finally, some silence I like. As for me, I did something I didn't expect. I moved into a tiny 2-bedroom above a print shop near the edge of the city, not fancy, not curated. But it was mine. I got a dog too. His name's Benson. He's loud, anxious, and afraid of doorbells. Perfect match. And one morning, months later, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a small envelope. Handwritten. No note. No explanation. Just a photo. Me from the gallery. Standing behind Junie, looking straight ahead. Someone must have snapped it without knowing who I was. But the expression on my face told the whole story. Not pain. Not rage. Peace. I still don't know who sent it. Maybe Mason. Maybe even Carrie. But I kept it. Because it reminded me that sometimes, walking away is the ending. Sometimes the closure isn't a confrontation or revenge. It's the echo of your own footsteps leaving behind the version of yourself that begged to be chosen. And in that silence, I didn't just lose a marriage. I found myself.